Hello, my name is Tom Rouse. I'm an IPC juror, and it's my privilege to both critique and score your image, The Watering Hole. Wonderful concept. Um, Concept's great. All these animals come into the water hole. I assume that you're either planning this for entry in either the artist category or the creative open category because you've added these index images here, which you need to do in both cases. So I'm going to treat this as an artist category um, entry, but it would apply either way to this or to a creative open. And in the artist category in particular, you're being judged not only on the outcome of the image and the 12 elements, but there's kind of an added element of, of not so much what the image is, but how you did it and how successfully you created these artistic um, embellishments, and in this case, selecting and compositing a number of animals. So again, let's look at the central subject first. Let's look at all the selections. Some are better than others. These are a little sharp. The deer in the foreground just has the sharp cutout quality. There's a number of reasons for that, and I'll come to that more specifically. Uh, the scale is great. I think he looks perfect there. I think the um, perspective looks good. This deer in the way back here is I think in perfect proportion. Some of the elements are not in as good a proportion. The squirrel over here seems kind of massive for a squirrel at that distance. I think he's far too large, and I think this is a possum. The possum really stands out, and I don't think the selection is quite sold out. And let me say, I would give this a 75 in the artist category, probably the same in the creative open category. It's an above average image. And it's a great concept, but I think there's some things you could do that would really bring this up higher into the merit category. Um, I mean, let me say this: I'm totally sold on the bird. I would not have challenged that having been dropped in as a selection. That's worked well. But with the deer, we're the background scene is lovely. It's a very soft light under a canopy. Um, the deer here is a little bit sharp. It's a little bit perhaps over sharpened. Some of this high degree of local contrast is is not uh, is not what you'd find in this kind of lighting. We have to match the lighting, and although there's no very bold direction of light, most of the light that we're seeing that's implied in the frame is coming from this upper central area. Um, the light on the deer needs to be softer. One of the ways you could accomplish that is when you bring that up in camera raw, maybe take the adjustment tool and just apply it just to his fur. Bring that down a little with the clarity slider. Reduce the clarity. Later versions, you also have the opportunity to reduce the texture. Just soften it up a little bit to begin with. And then the selection itself. I think the selection needs to be feathered. Just 1 or 2 pixels is very sharp um, and has the sense of being selected. Um, and then thirdly, in order to sell that selection into the scene, as shadows are very important. And I don't think there's a sufficient amount of shadow under the animal. Again, it's a kind of diffuse ambient light. There's no real strong sense of direction, but you need some shadow underneath the animal to really sell that selection. Again, there's really none under the squirrel either. The bird, I don't think you need it. The turtle's done quite well. Perhaps you could, put a layer mask on and kind of smooth out the back so it appeared as though he was emerging from the water. Um, the deer in the distance, again, I think the proportions are just right there. It'd be nice if he was just a little brighter. The doe in the background, just a little brighter. It takes a while to get to her, but it's nicely done. And the heron, I'm not sure. I have some concerns about the scale of it, if it's too big or too small or something. I'd rather see it elsewhere in the photograph and smaller. It's really the brightest, it's the biggest, brightest thing in the image. I'm kind of drawn to him instead of the deer. I think the storytelling part is the deer. And then this, I don't know if this is a possum, baby possum, something like that. Again, I think its scale is a little too large, and then it has a very pronounced frontal lighting, and it's just too much local contrast for this very soft scene. I'd like to see it brought down in brightness, and then just again, maybe use the clarity slider with an adjustment brush in Camera Raw to kind of diminish that local contrast. So there's one thing more thing I would add. You need something to bring all these elements together. Anytime you're putting one element into a scene, that scene has its own ambient light. So my suggestion, the trick I often use is with this deer here, or with any of the selections, and some would need it more than others, but let's just talk about the deer. If you were to take that and add a layer style of a very, very low opacity inner glow, and you select some of this light green light here, keep it just a little bit, select this and then raise the brightness just a little bit, pull that slider up in the color selection area so it's just a little brighter, keep it fairly desaturated, and then put just the slightest inner glow on the selection. And in fact, let me add to that. Duplicate that layer, put the layer style on top, just that very, very slight amount of inner glow. And this is getting complicated, but then you want to turn the fill opacity down. When you turn the fill opacity down, all you see is the layer style. You don't see the pixels. You have the pixels underneath, on the layer underneath. You have the animal itself, and then on the top you just have that layer style. If you look at the blending options, you can click a box that says Layer Mask Hides Effects. So then you get that inner glow. You can leave it where it belongs, take it off where it doesn't belong. So you're going to see across the back. You're probably not going to see it on the belly here. It doesn't make sense, and maybe not on the legs either. So you can just take that off selectively with a layer mask. But again, you have to apply it on its own layer, reduce the fill to 0, and then click on that selection in the middle of the blending options dialog. The blending options at the top left of the dialog box in the layers style menu. You want to click on Layer Mask Hides Effects, and then you can take it out selectively. And you could probably use it a little bit on the bird, and perhaps on the other animals too. Just the slightest bit of inner glow, and ambient light wraps around the object as it would in real life if you put it in that scene. So I'm getting long-winded here. I know I can't get too involved in the Photoshop of things, but I think let me kind of review these things. I think the selections are a little sharp. I think it'd be nice to put just a 2 or 3 pixel, depending on its resolution dependent, but 2 or 3 pixels of feather on that selection around the animal. Maybe a little inner glow, as we were discussing, to bring it into the scene, and shadows. It needs a shadow, more specific shadow. It doesn't have to be real dark because it's a soft kind of wraparound ambient light. I think the scale of this deer and this deer are just perfect. I think the perspective's fine. I'm totally sold on this little bird here. I would never even questioned it. This squirrel is just too big. And this, if it's a possum or a vole or whatever it is, it's just too frontally written, too crisp, and a little bit too large. So I think doing you would do better with fewer elements. Perhaps you don't need the squirrel at all, or the vole, or perhaps another position and another scale in the frame would contribute more to the success of the image. But I think it's a great start and a great image and a great concept. I think with more work that you could bring it into the merit category. It's a great idea. I mean, You almost have to do it that. Where else could you find the animals all in the same frame at the same time? That would be a magic of its own. So thanks for the opportunity to critique the image. I hope I've helped. And now remember, this is just one judge's opinion. On any panel, there are 5 judges, and often they have very similar scores, and occasionally they don't. So another judge might have an entirely different review of this. But that's mine. I've hoped that it helps, and sorry I can't address you by name. I just have the images, but good luck with competition, and thanks for the opportunity to critique your image.